al primer panel temático y que va a estar a cargo de Madadh McLaine, secretaria general de Zero Emission Shipping Technology Association, ZESTAS, y que va a tratar sobre cerrando el círculo de la sostenibilidad, renunciar a la riqueza económica y social. Entonces, Madadh McLaine tiene la palabra.
Ladies and gentlemen, I realize that you are all moving and chatting and networking and want to see the fair, but we're behind schedule. So in spite of the fact that you're still moving, we're going to go ahead with this panel discussion. We've just heard how important the maritime sector is for the Chilean economy, as well as the ambitions of Valparaiso and San Antonio ports. A new generation of maritime port industry is making decisive progress in the materialization of public and private initiatives that allow us to reach the goals of net zero and zero emissions between 2030 and 2050. There is significant progress in the substitution of fossil fuels for renewable energy technologies, and this is laying foundations important to the entire industry as shipping starts in ports. Progress is being made in the introduction of environmentally friendly port infrastructure, replacing polluting assets while not compromising economic returns. In this context, it is important that all actors in the transport and infrastructure services chain have a roadmap for CO2 reduction that allows them to achieve operational, environmental, and economic objectives. The main topics that we'll discuss today are autonomous cargo transportation vehicles, the need for the rapid upscale and adoption of zero-emission ship technologies known as ZEST, roadmaps for GHG reductions that achieve operational and environmental and financial objectives, as well as lessons learned from programs focused on generating positive environmental performance with shared value actions, community relations, and energy efficiencies. We have 4 illustrious panelists with us today, and we will be starting with Mikael Lind. Mikael is the Senior Strategic Research Advisor for RISE, an adjunct professor in Maritime Informatics at Chalmers University in Sweden. And ladies and gentlemen, it is also his birthday today, so he gets to go first. Mikael, the floor is yours. Welcome, Mikael.
Thanks a lot. Let me start. First of all, to say that I come from, as the moderator introduced me here, from the Research Institute of Sweden. I'm passionate very much about, as being the first adjunct professor in the world in maritime informatics. I would say that in the light of what is needed to be achieved for the maritime sector as a very self-organized ecosystem, we need different ways of connecting to each other. So my trial here is to talk a little bit about the need for collaboration and digitalization to be steered towards both economic and societal value. My talk today will be based on a work or an effort that we did this spring, where we joined forces, a number of people under the umbrella of the Nordic West Office, looking into different enablers for the maritime decarbonization. What this talk will be about is a value chain-based pathways towards zero-emission shipping, which you may have seen a lot of noise about lately, where we say that it is not possible to just look up on the maritime operational value chain with ships steaming from port to port, in other words, fuels and ships in use. We also need to regard and join forces both with the shipbuilding value chain, as the engines and also the tanks on board the ships are dependent on which type of fuel that is going to be both available and to be used. And then that means also that we need to study and look into and join forces with the maritime fuel value chain as well. So this work on the practical playbook for maritime decarbonization was a contribution from more than 50 experts, and where we evaluated, and I will talk a little bit about these different enablers for maritime decarbonization. And one of the most important points here was that independent on which scenario, and we use the shell scenarios on storms, swells, and the clear sky, independent on each of the scenarios, we will not meet the Paris Agreement, which is not good. And that means that we need to act now. The work was based on 17 interviews. We did 4 workshops, and we looked up on these 3 maritime transition scenarios. We identified 37 enablers. We positioned them within 3 independent value chains, and the enablers were assessed by 6 different criteria, providing 7 recommendations and 40 additional suggestions, and we engaged 19 stakeholders in a coalition of willing to make this contribution. Looking up on the way of regarding this, the value chains, we pushed the idea that we need to both look at the production of fuel, the distribution of fuel, and also the storing of fuel. And as you may have seen, there's a lot of discussions at the moment on the big shipping lines joining forces with, for example, methanol production companies at the same time as they are ordering methanol ships. And this area is very hard to conceive, is one of my conclusions. There's a lot of nitty-gritty details that is behind all these aspects. And one of the things that we may know is that you can, if the price is not right, or if there is no capacity of methanol, it will be possible to run the engines on fossil fuel anyway, which is of course a dangerous situation, because that means that we might not come to that situation where we utilize the opportunities of carbon-free fuel. The shipbuilding would of course be about design, build, deliver, upgrade, and reuse, recycle, and here there are very big challenges, because dependent on which fuel you choose to run the ship on, that also provides consequences for which of or how much of the rest of the ship that can be used for passengers and or goods. And then of course we have the maritime operational value chain, having the ships steaming from port to port, fuel and ships in use, with the ships circulating numerous times. Me, who has been a lot of a fan of looking into how you can enhance the synchronization, I also feel that we have a challenge here in that very much of the maritime operations are coordinated through the physical presence. That means also that ships are racing against each other in order to come first in line, etc. Looking up on the enablers, we brought forward these categories, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 categories, which were positioned then in the value chains. We had some categories that were of concern for all 3 value chains, and some of them were for just 2 value chains, and some of them were for just one value chain. So, for example, you see here in the middle that the multi-fuels, other power sources, regulations, and financing would concern all 3, while circularity would be more related to the shipbuilding value chain and the maritime operational value chain. Port measures more from the for the marine fuel value chain and the maritime operation value chain, and so forth. Interesting to see here is that for example, circularity means that we want to look into how we can reuse steel, which is a challenge, of course. And then you look upon that, you see that there's a huge palette of different enablers that you can choose from if you are engaged in this sector. And for short sea shipping, for example, there would be a strong push towards biodiesel or biofuel in different ways. LNG is a lot of discussions about whether that intermediary fuel would be used or would contribute enough to the CO2 reduction. We do have a lot of regulations coming forward, such as the EEDI, EXI, CII, and the Fit for 55 with the onshore power supply. There are also for other power sources such as wind and solar that are debated a lot as well, how much that can be contributed to. We have some really pioneering projects within wind support where you have sails on board goods ships, etc. It's a little bit revealed in Dunkel how autonomous ships would contribute to the whole situation, but of course that is an important way at least to streamline the operations in such a way. You have also in the operations control, you have numerous things that are associated to the digitalization as well. There's a big push towards just-in-time port calls, but that also means that we need to change the culture of how things are working. So here is some type of flavors, and we are very well positioned. And if you look into the Maritime Executive, you find that 3 articles has now been launched on the playbook on this. And the conclusion is basically that we need to secure more fuel, more fossil-free fuel. We need to accelerate the shipbuilding because we need to substitute a lot of the ships that are out there, and the maritime operational value chain needs to adopt in order to come to this point. And the way to do this is really to come forward with different, what we call shipping decarbonization partnerships. And just recently, we launched a new framework, which was looking upon both the form of partnership and also the focus of the partnership. And taking these dimensions here, you see that if you take square A1 common for the vertical collaboration, many initiatives that are taking are for the benefit of the company with their own value chain, and then they partner with a number of different other partners that would contribute to that value chain. An example would be the Maersk methanol company collaboration. But then you can also look upon on industry benefits that would come out, and also on the ecosystem and more with engaging multiple benefits. You have horizontal, which would mean that there are several companies that would be competitors that would be in the same collaboration arena. We have tanker companies, for example, constituting a pool which you can utilize to get you choose basically, or you're offered the best tanker company that would be offering that service between 2 geographical points, which one is the most relevant to use by that time. You have industry benefits such as the on the horizontal level, such as the Digital Container Shipping Association, or even if you look into International Association of Harbors and Ports. If you go to the diagonal one, there's a lot of initiatives taken on the industry level, where you would involve different types of stakeholders, such as the Global Maritime Forum, or you have the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization, or you have the McKinney Maersk, etc. And you also actually have on the ecosystem level, you would have diagonal aspects as well, such as I think it's called Zero Emission Partnership with the World Economic Forum. So basically, there is a number of different initiatives being taken, but on the other hand, we need to be very careful here. We just made a study, and in 2021, there was about 15,200 ship owners that were engaged in visiting 5,578 ports in producing the 747 million ton of CO2 emissions. And I think that an unresolved quest is really how can we then secure engagement of those, the long tail. For sure, it's very few shipping companies that stand for 20% of the carbon emission that is generated, or also on the port side, it's very few ports that stand for 20% of the emissions coming out from the ships being at the berth. But in any case, I mean, if we wanted to attack the whole industry, we need to think about how can we actually come to the point where we are supporting those companies. So by this, and this matrix is also was released last week in UNCTAD, this framework, and maybe something to look into. I would be happy to share that with anyone that is interested. So I see this as my opening speech to the theme of this panel, and I hope that that would inspire. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mikael. Next, we have Pia Meling. Pia is the Vice President of Marketing. Oh, no, sorry. She's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Massterly. Very interesting collaboration, and I believe that she's going to explain this all. She's speaking to us from Norway. Pia, are you online?
I'm here. I get you to see me.
All right. Okay. Brilliant. I can hear you. I can't see you yet, but I'm sure the tech
Okay.
guys will take care of that. But nice to see you again, Pia.
Should be able to see me now.
There you are. I can see you now. Welcome.
Good. With a nice green background, and then we'll try and share the screen as well. Here. Let's see. It's far from Norway to Chile, but I think we are, you're seeing my screen now, right?
Yeah, we can see it now. Yep.
Good. So thank you for inviting me. Should have been there in person, of course, but it's it's a bit far to travel, but I'm happy to be here on Zoom. Massterly, the company that I work for, is a joint venture between Kongsberg Maritime and Wilhelmsen here in Norway. They are both global companies, but they're Norwegian owned. Kongsberg delivering technology and Wilhelmsen delivering ship operation and logistics. And together they want to take and to help develop the market for autonomous maritime logistics and autonomous shipping. And why do we want to do that? It is to help transition the flow of goods from road to sea where that is possible, because it's very hard for vessels today to compete with trucks, as trucks are very cheap and very flexible. So the idea of bringing in autonomy is actually to lower the operating costs of smaller vessels close to shore on medium or short distance, so that we can enable this transition, because of course it's a lot more environmentally friendly to transport goods on vessels than even if you had zero emission trucks, which might be coming in the future. It's a lot of issues with road transportation. There's microplastic, there's other pollution, there's noise, there's traffic jams and accidents. So we believe there is a great potential here if we can make shipping by sea more competitive. And so the lower operating cost per day is because we still have people in the loop, but the crew is working remotely, not on board the vessel. At least part of the crew could be working remotely, and hence handling several vessels at the same time. So maybe they can handle 5 or 7 vessels instead of 1. And that, of course, gives the economy of scale. We also think that we can improve efficiency a lot by digitizing and planning much better in the whole logistics chain. And also the port operations, because we actually need to plan everything really well when we're looking at autonomous vessels. And safety can also be enhanced. There's a lot of incidents today that are due to human error, people who are tired or not paying attention or miscommunicating. So that can definitely be improved. But most importantly, we see this as a way of helping the transition to zero emission or low emission by affording the zero emission technology, which is more expensive than the conventional diesel technology, but also optimizing on the energy consumption and optimizing the voyages. And this is the first project that we have. It's a quite famous vessel after a few years now in the press. Yara Birkeland is a small container vessel, 120 TEU, that is exclusively built for the use of Yara, who is a fertilizer producer here in Norway. So they're basically using this vessel as a shuttle to ship their containers of fertilizer from their production site to a larger port where they will go off into the world on bigger conventional vessels. It's a fully electric vessel. They have 8 battery rooms like this one on the picture, equals 80 medium-sized Tesla cars. So it's zero emission, and it's now undergoing a trial period with crew on board, and it will move towards uncrewed voyages in estimated 2 years from now. And this has been, in Norway, this has been something that has a lot of attention. This is a Norwegian Prime Minister in front of the vessel, and this is from the naming ceremony where we had the Norwegian Crown Prince also attending. So it's something that Norway sees as a potential export technology for Norway to export zero emission autonomous vessels as a service. And then we have a second customer here. This is, as you can see, 2 vessels. They are different design. It's roll-on, roll-off vessels that can take trucks. And this owner is a grocery distributor called ASKO, the biggest one in Norway. They have around 800 trucks on the road every day, transporting groceries around the country. So in this case, these first vessels will start crossing the Oslo fjord, well, a fjord here in Norway, where instead of driving all the way around this fjord on really congested roads, they will go across the waterway as such. And we have the same process here. They will be with a limited crew for 2 years and then uncrewed by 2025, we estimate. And they are just starting operation very soon, while the Yara one is already has been in operation since April. And you can see on the lower right side here on these pictures, it's from the port, one of the ports. On the other side is a normal double-ended car ferry that also traffics this port, and then there's these 2 vessels that will take the trailers back and forth. And it's actually going to be a zero-emission logistics chain all the way, because these trailers are also emission-free, fully electric, and it's going to also be an automated solution in port where terminal tractors that are also autonomous will pull these trailers on and off the vessels, and then they will cross, and there's going to be a driver on the other side picking up the trailer. So this is very interesting as a concept, because it can be basically adopted to any port or area where there is a ferry port, and many places in the world we have this, crowded roads and more open seaways where this could be a potential. But it's now for very short distances. The crossing is 50 minutes. It's at a very slow speed. We're talking about 8 knots speed, and it's not at the high seas, of course, because you also need connectivity and you need to limit the risks, and you cannot put this, crossing the Atlantic right now. But of course, for domestic short sea trades, this can be an interesting option. These are also fully electric vessels, no diesel backup at all, only batteries. And then we have a third customer looking at the similar concept, very small container vessel in this case. They haven't built it yet, but they're working on the project. And this is a furniture producer in Norway. But the interesting part for us is that they're now partnering with a huge third-party logistics company, DB Schenker, Germans, owned by Deutsche Bahn. And I think this is going to be, if they really go ahead with this project, it's going to be very interesting to see how now not only cargo owners, but also logistics companies are actually becoming ship owners. It's disrupting shipping in a way. They want to control their own logistics more than before. And they can due to these kind of vessels. So to make this happen, we need a remote operations center. We need connectivity and, of course, systems on board the vessels, sensors, camera systems, and fully integrated systems so everything can be remotely monitored and controlled. And we need a vessel manager or a vessel operator that Massterly is. And there's still people in the loop. So these are like 4 of the guys. We have now 16 people actually, and 2 women as well, employed that will work shift on board these vessels in this testing period and eventually work 24/7 shifts from a remote operations center. And this is their workstation as it looks now. We are of course, what's on the screens is not going to be in the end game. We are testing out various options of software, but the setup will look something like this. And we also want to emphasize that we're not only working with uncrewed vessels, also conventional vessels can get support from these certified crew with a lot of experience that are working remotely. So we think for this energy transition, first and foremost, battery is of course something new where we don't find actually a lot of competency on the engineers. Most chief engineers have been working on big diesel engines, and when you have a fully electric vessel, it's very different. So there's a shortage of crew. There's definitely a shortage of competency when it comes to running on new fuels like hydrogen, ammonia, and methanol. So we believe that a specialized set of people working remotely in a remote operations center can also support the crew on board all these new vessels to make sure that it's safe and efficient. We are working with another ferry operator to look at how we can remove only the chief engineer role to shore, but the bridge crew stays on, so that that all the monitoring of the engine room is done from shore, and that is for electric vessels again, where it's possible to do that. It's not a lot of maintenance during the voyage and so on. And we also think that sometime in the future, we could have a periodically unmanned bridge where the bridge watch is done from a remote operations center and basically help to limit the overtime use or keep the resting hours for the crew. So that's also what I intended to say. Looking forward to the discussion and sharing of more information here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pia, and thank you for bringing that in time. Next up, we have Christopher Saavedra, Kalmar-Cargotec Corporation, and he also will be delivering virtually. So, Christopher, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Hello. Welcome. So are you going to be sharing screen?
Yes, I'm sharing. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Okay, we're seeing the presenter side of it. If you want to go into presenter mode, there we go. Perfect. Take it away, Christopher.
Great. So thanks for the opportunity to be here and really interesting topics from Pia and Mikael. I am also quite passionate about this topic, and I may say these are really exciting times to be in our industry. So, well, the plan for today is that I am willing to share a little bit more about these CO2 reduction roadmaps and how can we enable operational, environmental, and financial targets. So the idea is to go through some mega trends, drivers around eco-efficiency, and then I will share you some practical steps on how you can start to reduce the CO2 reduction in your sites. So some mega trends, and this is quite interesting, you know, it depends on the region or maybe the country you're currently operating. But in an overall, we are seeing, you know, more mega vessels coming, and sometimes we only think like, okay, big vessels, we need to have the capability to serve those vessels, but you need to take a look, an holistic look here, because you need to take into consideration how you're planning to storage the cargo that you discharge from the vessel, and then to think about how that cargo will be moving through barge, through trains, through trucks. So it's a huge complexity and a huge amount of resources you need to sustain this type of operations. Then it comes sustainability, a lot of things going on around electric or full electric equipment, hydrogen, and many other green sources being evaluated by port operators. We got the industry consolidation. Probably that sounds quite cool, but again, for port operator, it's quite complex, especially from an operational and financial and even planning point of view, you know. And as a last point, we got digitalization and automation. I think that there are a lot of opportunities, and especially for Latin American countries, to improve current operation beyond process automation. And you know, sometimes we only think on equipment automation. I will say that's like the last stage. So there is a lot of opportunities when it comes to process automation per se. Now, what is currently driving eco-efficiency? So we got a lot of public and internal pressure. I may say now customers want to have a green service, so that push operators to become green. There is a lot of legislations coming soon. It is quite near, I may say, especially for Latin American countries. We are hearing that your neighbor in the US, for example, California, they already got target for 2030 to be fully electric and green operation. So it's quite challenging, and the same situation in Europe. But again, how to reach that level, that's really the tricky part. At the same time, investor needs still on the table. So yes, you need to be green, but continue achieving, you know, all the financial targets. And there is a lot of customer interest out there on how they can partner and become greener from the end-to-end process point of view. When it comes to emission at container terminals, you know, there are a lot of sources, vessels, trucks, yard equipment, buildings, and other. But at the end, I always like to say this, there is like no one-fit-all solution here. You really need to understand your way of working. There are a lot of ways you can, on a short, mid, and long-term, start reducing those emissions. There is technology available, you know, efficient diesel engines, energy regeneration, hybrid solutions, fully electric, sometimes tweaking the way of working, driving more efficient, driving in different ways also may reduce the amount of consumption of fuel, and at the same time reduce the CO2 emissions. So there are different ways, and there are especially a lot of low-hanging fruits you can identify in a short term. But again, how can we respond to these needs? And well, here when it's coming to play, the CO2 reduction roadmap, and this is how Kalmar is currently supporting customers worldwide on this journey. So basically, the first step here is that you need to analyze your current operation. In simple words, you need to understand the way of working here, understand your cycle analysis, understand how the equipment is behaving in your yard, identify all those operational costs, and then really important here, you need to have a proper risk and opportunities analysis in place. Then the second step, so once you got the baseline, you need to present different alternative for future scenarios you are looking to achieve here. So you need to take a look into the infrastructure required, If you are considering fully electric equipment, how about the power grid capacity, the whole elements you need to have in place to enable this type of operations. I mentioned electric, but at the same time, there are many customers also worldwide evaluating different type of sources, not only electric, battery power, hydrogen, green fuels, HBO. It all depends on your specific case, but any of those options, I am 100% sure that they will change the way of working. So you need to adapt to this new way of working, and it's quite critical that you understand what is the effect on people and skills, on the maintenance point of view, and the most important here, how is the impact on the carbon footprint, because all of these need to be aligned with your targets. Then we jump into one of the interesting aspects here, so the financial impact, and probably the whole board will be taking a huge deep dive on this step over here, and basically is putting together all the capex and opex for those type of scenarios, identifying the ROI. That's quite important, and according to the country you are currently operating, you can identify if there are some grants, subsidies. That's also some places in Europe that you got those options, but again, all this is really case by case. So then once you got these 3 steps ready, then it comes to the implementation. And again, it's quite tricky. If we are talking about a greenfield site, they are quite unique these days. I may say quite few worldwide. Most of the current cases are brownfield terminals looking to become greener, evaluating process automation, equipment automation, at the same time, zero emission equipment. So they are trying to align all these target in one plan. So there is no other way that going step-by-step approach. It's really the way forward here, and you need to have a proper implementation plan where you match people and skills, process, and technology. Once you implementate this action, then you need to fine-tune these, and there are again different ways that you will fine-tune these, so to say, future scenario, no? Once implemented. So you need to evaluate how to train the technicians. You know, it's not only like deploying new technology, it's at the same time you need to be sure that you got the people and skills ready to be able to maintain this type of equipment, to operate this type of equipment. There is a lot of training worldwide with this new type of equipment. If you are talking about a fully electric equipment, how about the maintenance to those type of equipment? It's you know, all this is quite important from our operational point of view. And again, there are also a lot of outsourcing possibilities when it comes to training the teams, sharing best practices, to be able to sustain this type of operations. But well, in a nutshell, I may say that it all starts by understanding your way of working, your current states, current pain points, setting operational and environmental, financial targets. Those 3 need to match. If you left one behind, I am sure that you will need to stop and adjust at some moment in time to be able to match those 3. We need a lot of data, actually, a lot of data to be able to at least identify this baseline. And it's not only data, you need quality data to be able to evaluate these decisions. There is a proper analysis you need to do for all the options you have in mind. You need to identify what is the operational, environmental, and financial impact of those. It's really important to go step by step. I make a lot of emphasis on this step by step because you are currently having an ongoing operation, and it's not that easy to just deploy a new tech and, you know, try new things in the yard, because all those will have a financial impact and also a commercial impact. So you need to make sure you got all the team involved, the whole people, you know, financial team, civil team, operational, commercial, legal, environmental team on the same table, so to say, understanding the whole project that you're planning to implement. And well, as Kalmar, we are more than happy to help you on this journey. And I would like to close my slot here saying that, yes, we can put eco-efficiency into action step by step, but we can do it only together. So thanks, Madadh.
Great, thank you very much. And last but not least, we have in person David Fernández, who is the General Manager of FEPASA. And take it away.
Si el micrófono está funcionando, ¿se escucha ahí? ¿Sí? ¿Se escucha? Ok. Bueno, esta presentación es de ferrocarril de carga y básicamente lo que voy a presentar tiene que ver con el aporte que el ferrocarril puede hacer al crecimiento del país, pero también a los temas vinculados con medio ambiente. FEPASA es una empresa del grupo Copper, es una empresa que tiene un contrato de concesión de uso de infraestructura ferroviaria con Ferrocarril del Estado, F. Y tiene rodantes y locomotoras de propiedad privada. Bueno, lo primero es que es el interés de que declarar que efectivamente un tema importante que está hoy día localizado en Chile y en el mundo tiene que ver con respetar el medio ambiente, y el sentido es que esto no implique sacrificio de crecimiento económico. Y en ese sentido creemos que el ferrocarril de carga tiene una gran oportunidad de ser aprovechado en esta línea de crecimiento económico y medioambiental y calidad de vida sobre todo. Para que ustedes sepan, la red ferroviaria en la zona centro-sur de Chile tiene 1.700 kilómetros de extensión y es un activo de gran valor para el país. Este es un dibujo, un bosquejo de la red ferroviaria por donde circulan los trenes de carga en la zona centro-sur y está entre Calera y Puerto Montt, atendiendo puertos tan relevantes como Valparaíso, San Antonio, Ventana y los puertos de la región del Biobío. Hoy día se atienden grandes volúmenes mineros, forestales, exportación e importación de contenedores, y existe una gran oportunidad para atender próximamente el mercado salmonero ubicado en la 10ª región. Este activo, tal como lo mencionaba, es una inversión que se hizo en los años 1900 y que Chile le ha dado la espalda durante más de 50 años. Hoy día, si de crecimiento económico, de inversión, de empleo y de calidad de vida se trata, bueno, esta red ofrece una oportunidad muy relevante para el país, como vamos a examinar a continuación. El primer aporte que hace el tren tiene que ver con la descongestión de carreteras. Ahí no sé cómo puedo pinchar el uso de tren descongestiona. No sé cómo lo pueden. Gracias. Fíjense en este ejemplo que está acá. Es un tren de pasajeros entre el centro de Concepción y el puerto de Coronel. Un tren demora entre el centro de Concepción y el puerto de Coronel más o menos 45 minutos. Un vehículo en carretera, camión o auto, demora 1 hora 40 minutos, o sea, 55 minutos más. Un tren entre Concepción y el puerto de San Vicente demora 20 minutos. Ese mismo recorrido por carretera toma 1 hora 20, o sea, 1 hora más. Nuevo, entre Concepción y el puerto de Lirquén, un tren toma 1 hora y en el caso de un vehículo 1 hora y cuarto. Esto es algo que se repite no solo en la región del Biobío, sino en todas las ciudades puertos de Chile. Por lo tanto, este es un ejemplo concreto de cómo el tren puede aportar en la calidad de vida, no solo en lo que tiene que ver con contaminación, porque ese es un solo aspecto, sino como la profesional que explicaba anteriormente, Pía, también se refirió a temas tan relevantes como la congestión y los accidentes, y el otro tema relevante tiene que ver con la competitividad, que ya voy a mencionar más adelante. Respecto de los temas vinculados con accidentes, según la estadística del año 2021, los siniestros en carretera fueron 80.751, en ferrocarril fueron 111. Es abrumadora la cantidad de accidentes rodoviarios comparado con los accidentes ferroviarios. Además hay que decir que los accidentes ferroviarios son la mayoría por cruces indebidos de vehículos, más que accidentes propios del tren. Los fallecidos en carretera el año 2021, 1.688. En el modo ferroviario, solo 26. Lesionados en carretera, 51.928. En el modo ferroviario, solo 70. Nuevamente, es abrumadora lo que está pasando en un país que cada vez el metro cuadrado es más caro, que cada vez es más difícil construir carreteras con pistas de desaceleración, orejas de entrada, salida, con una población cada vez más densa y con un parque automotriz que no para de crecer. En un país muy estrecho, la invitación es a volver a darle una buena mirada al modo ferroviario. Ahora hablemos de contaminación. Fíjense que siempre se habla de CO2. Sin embargo, la contaminación que generan los vehículos en carretera también tiene que ver no solo con el dióxido de carbono, sino también con metano, óxido nitroso, óxidos nitrógeno, monóxido de carbono y otros compuestos orgánicos volátiles distintos al metano. Y si ahora vamos a una comparación, ustedes pueden ver que en CO2, en un ejemplo comparativo de un tren con 30, o sea, un camión de viaje con 30 toneladas, equivalente, la cantidad de camiones equivalente a un tren de 51 camiones con 30 toneladas o un tren de 51 carros, en esta comparativa, el CO2 genera 5 veces más que el tren equivalente. En el caso, ¿no es cierto?, de el óxido nitrógeno, perdón, en el metano, la relación es de 5 veces. Y así, hacia abajo, como ustedes pueden ver, es abrumadora la diferencia de contaminación que genera por tonelada efectivamente transportada el camión respecto del tren. Pero no solo es importante ocuparnos en Chile y en el mundo de la calidad de vida, no solo de la contaminación, de la congestión y de los accidentes, que tiene que ver con calidad de vida, ¿ya? Y aquí me quiero detener un poco porque hoy día se habla mucho de la electromovilidad, que nadie podría no felicitarla. Es muy importante desarrollar la electromovilidad. Sin embargo, la electromovilidad solo soluciona parte del problema. Cuando yo saco 1 millón de vehículos diésel de la carretera y pongo 1 millón de vehículos eléctricos, la accidentabilidad y las congestiones, la reducción de esos dos fenómenos es cero. No reduzco ningún accidente y no reduzco en nada la congestión. Entonces, nuevamente la invitación es a volver a mirar un capital enorme que tiene este país de 1.700 kilómetros de vía férrea para ser aprovechado en mejorar la calidad de vida. Pero eso no es todo. Además, el ferrocarril puede generar tremendas oportunidades en ahorros en logística. Un país como Chile, que es un país exportador, y su industria pesada está orientada a la exportación, es muy relevante tener ahorros en costos logísticos y el tren puede colaborar decididamente en esa línea. Si ustedes se fijan, en un análisis de costo entre el camión y el tren, pueden ver que revisando los componentes más relevantes de costos de un camión versus el tren, aquí la comparativa es un tren con 30 carros, ¿no es cierto?, equivalente al viaje de 30 camiones, en combustible, en un ejemplo de un viaje supuesto, ¿no es cierto?, de la zona de Valdivia con celulosa a la región del Biobío, consume 3 veces más combustible equivalente que el tren. Consume 30 veces más en costo de personal. Si uno suma todos los componentes, combustibles, peaje, mantenimiento, personal, depreciación y otros gastos de administración, el ferrocarril representa solo un 75% de los costos que tiene un camión, al menos. Entonces, de nuevo, cuando tenemos un país que quiere ser más competitivo, el tren ofrece nuevamente una ventaja irremontable respecto del camión. Algo pasó. Quiero volver acá. Aquí, por favor. ¿Me pueden volver acá? Por favor. Gracias. Fíjense, los países de la OCDE, los costos de logística en los países de la OCDE, el inland freight, el flete terrestre, desde la fábrica hasta los puertos, representa un 9% de los precios de exportación, de los precios FOB de exportación. En Chile, el mismo costo de trasladar un producto de fábrica, ex fábrica, a un puerto, en Chile cuesta el doble, un 18%. Es decir, Chile es la mitad de competitivo respecto de los países con los cuales nos queremos comparar. Por eso, lo que mencionaba anteriormente respecto a la competitividad, es tan importante mirar hacia el tren. Entonces, si queremos realmente incrementar la competitividad logística en Chile, pero también mejorando la calidad de vida de las personas, debemos volver a mirar al tren. ¿Qué desafíos tenemos entonces? Diseñar un plan nacional de desarrollo ferroviario para la carga, que propenda a incrementar la participación del tren del 4% que tiene hoy día, al menos a un 30%. ¿Pero qué se necesita para ello? A juicio nuestro, básicamente lo que está aquí. Uno podría listar una hoja larga de temas, pero si uno se puede concentrar, yo diría que ¿qué es lo que necesitamos? Primero, actualizar los criterios de evaluación pública para invertir en infraestructura ferroviaria. Y para eso se requiere entender y transparentar cuáles son los costos que genera la carga, de los costos que generan los pasajeros, para que cada uno pague los respectivos peajes que debe pagar en función de los aportes que hace. Eso es fundamental y eso hoy día no está claro. El segundo elemento tiene que ver con modernizar los criterios de evaluación social. Ustedes deben saber que el Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, que revisa los criterios de inversión que hace el Ferrocarril del Estado, lo hace considerando una metodología muy antigua que tiene que ver con los tiempos de traslado, o sea, el tiempo que nos consumimos las personas en trasladarnos de un punto A a un punto B. Pero evidentemente que eso está arcaico. Hoy día es muy importante conocer cuál es la accidentabilidad, cuáles son los costos del transporte y cuál es el nivel de congestión. Esos elementos no están incorporados en los criterios de evaluación social. Una vez que esos sean incorporados, las evaluaciones van a permitir tomar decisiones de inversión en infraestructura ferroviaria para la carga decididamente. Pero lo primero es reconocer que esto hay que actualizarlo. Y finalmente, ¿no es cierto?, reducir la inequidad del gasto público en infraestructura rodoviaria, en favor de la infraestructura rodoviaria, respecto de la discriminación que se ha hecho en inversión en infraestructura ferroviaria. ¿Perdón? Estoy terminando. Termino en un minuto, menos de un minuto. Finalmente, para cerrar, es muy importante permitir la inversión privada en infraestructura ferroviaria, sobre todo en la última milla. Y esto va a permitir dar mayor velocidad a los proyectos, dado que el aparato público le es mucho más complejo levantar recursos. Y aquí cierro para comentar que, a propósito de inversión privada, el ministro de Obras Públicas ayer anunció que de los proyectos estratégicos para el periodo 2022-2026 va el proyecto de concesión de tren Valparaíso-Santiago. Y eso tiene que ver con inversión privada. Así que tenemos una muy buena noticia que tiene que ver con el último punto que acabo de mencionar. Bueno, la idea es que efectivamente pensemos en grande para lograr los objetivos que acabamos de hablar. Muchas gracias.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for a panel discussion, which is a real shame because I was writing all these really interesting questions down to ask all of our very knowledgeable speakers, but I've been asked to just create a conclusion out of all of this. And in conclusion, I've written a list of words, key words that I took out of these different presentations. So data, but not just data, but analysis, cross-sector collaboration, the Internet of Things. So things talking to each other via the Internet, via communicating data to each other. Cross-sector connectivity. So ports talking to ships, containers talking to terminals, so that all of these things within the logistics network are beginning to communicate with each other, creating greater efficiencies, reducing costs, but also reducing emissions. But most importantly, out of this, my takeaway is that shipping can no longer be the cowboys of the seas. We need to plan ahead, and we need to work together, but not just ships, ports, terminals, but the entire logistics networks, obviously including rail transport, full supply chains. And we need to not only be looking at, in terms of emissions, we need to not only be looking at CO2, but we need to be looking at all polluting emissions. And I think, just in respect to our final speaker, another thing that's going to, we can all do whatever it is that we need to do, but we really need the support of our governments, and we need the support of investment. So I think this is something that we need to also take back to the politicians to say, we've got what we need, we can do this, but we need your support. Thank you very much for your time.
Agradecemos a Madadh McLaine por la moderación de este panel y a cada uno de quienes han expuesto en este. Y también queremos agradecer a nuestros panelistas, a nuestros auspiciadores del Congreso, a Movistar, a empresas Indra, Complejo Portuario Mejillones, Allgrid, Nokia, DP World y Fluxit Ports. Y los dejamos cordialmente invitados a las 2:15 de la tarde, a las 14:15 horas, para el segundo panel temático sobre integración inteligente de infraestructura, tecnología y procesos para crear una cadena logística predictiva más eficiente y productiva. Así es que hasta las 14:15 horas nos vemos.